Hello and welcome to this installment of our AndyMac Leadership Program. Today we will be talking about decision making. In my opinion, decision making is probably the most important skill you can have as a leader. Everything we do is dependent upon our ability to make good decisions to the best of our knowledge. So what we will discuss first, we will cover what is called the OODA loop. This was developed by a lieutenant colonel pilot back in the 60s. Then we will go over what I call Tater's three questions. These are three questions that I developed throughout my military career for ensuring that I am making the best decision. These three came about from lots of trial and error. And then last, we will talk about what I call the sea of gray. First, we'll talk about the OODA loop. Now, as I mentioned earlier, decision making is probably our biggest skill in this industry. And when I say industry, I mean in leadership, period. Whether you're a mortgage officer, a real estate agent, the CEO of a company, or leading troops in the battlefield, decision making is extremely important. Now, every one of us makes decisions every day, all the time. But what many of us don't do is that we don't actually codify what we're doing. And I know that that sounds trivial, but codifying what we're doing allows us to analyze and improve our decision-making skills. As I mentioned, we're going through the OODA loop. First thing on the OODA loop is observe. These are things we do all the time. So this isn't cosmic science out here. Recognize the problem, gather data relative to the problem. Basically, you're just trying to see what needs to be fixed. All right. Next is orient. You're going to list possible solutions or courses of action. And then you're going to test those possible solutions. Again, this is what we do every day. You see a problem, how do I fix it? And then, very importantly, you must select the best decision. You must decide. Many of us get so caught up in, am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? I'm so afraid that I'm going to be doing it right. We've been taught since we were 5 years old, if you get it wrong on the test, you're going to be punished. And so if you get it wrong, you're going to be punished. Well, that's not the way the real world works. What is right and what is wrong changes all the time. So we must decide. The biggest issue that you could have is if you cannot decide, if you do not pick something. Picking the wrong choice is better than picking no choice at all. And then the last one is act. Implement the problem to the solution. You choose a path and you go with it. And guess what? It starts over. Once you make that decision, then you're looking to see if there's any issues with that decision that you made. You're orienting yourself to find possible solutions. You're deciding again, and then you're acting. Making your choice, just because you choose something, does not mean you're stuck with it forever. Very rarely are you stuck with a decision forever. You make a decision, and if you veer off a little bit off course, then you make another decision to get yourself back, and then you veer off, and then you come back, and then you veer off, come back. It looks like a little squiggly line. That is how decision making should be. It shouldn't be, I've got to make this decision, and it's going to affect the rest of my life. No, it'll affect your life as long as it takes for you to correct it if you get it wrong, or to make it better if you get it right. That's what we're looking for. In our decision making, so in the course of my career, I have had to come across a lot of decisions. And so in the course of my career as a military officer, I've come up with these three questions. So question one, similar to orient, have I gathered all the available information? Now, I came up with this one because when I was in the military, I had a young airman. He was not showing up for work, constantly late. He had a lot of paperwork, and the decision was made to remove him from the Air Force. Essentially, he was fired. Uh, I was a young lieutenant. I made that decision based off the information I had. But I come to find out that he was late because he kept staying up all night playing video games, and no one ever actually talked to him and gave him expectations of what he should be doing while he was at work. He misunderstood what his rules were. He thought he could come in 10 minutes late and nobody would really worry, or 5 minutes late. And nobody ever sat him down and told him, this is what you got to do. Nobody ever sat him down and said, if you continue to do this, you will be fired. I just fired him straight out. And it's one of those decisions that I hate to this day that I made. I wish I had done more to help him out a little bit. And so from then on, I made sure, do I have all the information? Another scenario is we had an individual. He was a staff sergeant, so middle ranking enlisted member. I know a lot of these terms don't mean shit to you. Middle ranking enlisted member. He kept fixing our airplanes wrong. What I mean by that, we had what's called an auxiliary power unit. It's a very big engine that helps start the aircraft. He installed it wrong twice, and we were about to jump all over his butt. Come to find out, his mind wasn't in the right place. He'd gotten divorced earlier that week, didn't tell anyone, and so his mind wasn't in the right place. And so rather than jump his butt, we decided we pulled him off the line. He wasn't going to work on aircraft anymore, and we got him help to get his mind right. And when he got his mind right, we put him back in the fray and started working again. But sometimes that's what's happening when you have somebody who keeps screwing up. Their mind isn't in the right place because something else over here is happening. So we got to make sure we gather all the right information before we make a decision. Especially when we respect somebody's life. Next question is always, what's my decision? You gotta pick a decision. And you get 3 decisions: yes, no, or what I call hold. Basically, hold is, I'm not going to make a decision just yet. You gotta be careful with that one because it can lead you into indecision and making no decision at all. So you have to have what we in the military have call the GICL line. The good idea cutoff line is what we call it, the GICL. And so once you reach that line, it's a time frame. You have a time frame of when you got to make a decision. Once you hit that line, you no longer get to hold. It is yes or no. We're going forward or we're not. We're going to pick something else. You got to make a decision. Every decision has a GICL. You just have to be able to pick it out. And you need to set one. Like if you're in a decision, you need to set a date or a time, so that you don't get caught up into that whirlpool of, well, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? It's your chance to shine and make a decision. Throughout my career, this one I came up with yes or yes, but as opposed to no. This works really great when you're dealing with your bosses and they want you to do something. Hey, I want you to I want you to take 100 loans. Okay, I can do that, but it's going to cost overtime. It's going to cost this. It's going to cost that. I'm going to have to extend the number of hours in a day. I can't do it with 24 hours in a day. You've got to make it 26. That kind of thing. We used to use that all the time. I remember I had a commander once tell me we needed to move an aircraft before we completely put it back together. And I was like, yes, sir, we can do that. But you're going to risk destroying a multi-million-dollar airplane. And I gave him all the reasons why we couldn't do it. I said, if you're willing to take that risk, we'll go for it. He decided to, and so we moved the airplane. Luckily, nothing happened. But that's what I mean by yes, but. The last of my 3 questions that I always ask is, can I handle the consequences of my decision? Basically, can I handle the butt chewing that's going to come with this? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's, yeah, I think I'm okay with what I'm doing. I feel passionately enough about this that if I get fired, if I lose my job, that's fine. I'm doing what I know to be right. And so you must always ask yourself that, can I handle consequences of my decision? You must always take responsibility for your decisions. Nobody else can take them for you. Nobody else can do it. You can't say, oh, so-and-so told me. Oh, I gave that to so-and-so to do, and they did it wrong. No. If somebody told you, that's fine, but you made the decision to listen to them. And so you must face the consequence. You must be able to handle that consequence that comes with it. You don't get to say, well, my boss told me to. Tough luck. You made the decision to carry out what your boss told you. And this is coming from a guy who has spent the last 10 years in the military. Even for us, we don't get to just blindly follow orders. We get to say, no, I don't want to do it. Now, we might get fired because we're not willing to do what the boss tells us, but we have to sleep with the decisions that we make. And so will you. So last one I want to discuss is what I call the sea of gray. Decisions are not always black and white. You might have yes over here, no over here, but in the middle is this big sea of gray. As a leader, you live in this sea of gray. Very few times is the answer a black and white, yes or no. You have to decide between what is, and a lot of times you have to decide between what is morally right versus what is legally right. I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples. When I was in the military, again, back when I was a lieutenant, I was in charge of the aircraft maintenance for 3 aircraft that we had sent down to Florida. I worked on what was called AC-130s back then, or what is called AC-130s back then. These are C-130 cargo planes that have howitzer cannons and missiles coming out of everywhere. Our job was to drop in paratroopers and to provide covering fire for them as they come to the ground. So we're there, we're in Florida, we're only going to be there for a week. We've been there for 6 days. This is the last day and we've been there for 6 days. So we haven't been able to get off the ground once in the past 6 days because weather kept rolling in. We had this fog. All of our missions were happening at 4 o'clock in the morning. And we'd have this big, thick fog come in. Well, we couldn't take off in the fog because we couldn't drop our paratroopers in fog. They can't see where they're going. And we can't provide cover and fire because you can't see what you're trying to hit on the ground. But on the last day, there was no fog, no nothing. We've gotten 2 of our aircraft off the ground. Our last one's about to go, and turns out that a little door hinge, a door about this big, it broke. Now this door, the function of this door is so that it's on the engine, and if the engine catches fire, you can shove a fire extinguisher in there and put the fire out. But you can't have it broken because it'll flap loose, break off at 30,000 feet and probably kill somebody. And so what our rules tell us is that, so we were going to have this fixed, and it was going to take about an hour to 2 hours to get it fixed. What our rules tell us is that we are not allowed to deviate we must get it fixed. We can't deviate from what the rules tell us we can do. One of my guys came to me and said, "Hey, sir, it's going to take about a couple hours to fix this. Or we can take what is called safety wire. It's really thin copper wire, and we can safety wire it shut. We can wire it closed if you're willing to do that." And so I went through my three. I tried to gather all the applicable information. Can we do it any faster? If that engine catches fire, can we still break the safety wire to put it out? I was told yes. It's like super, super thin. It's thinner than, it's almost as thin as a hair. Can we do that? And then I went to my pilots and I said, "Hey, we're looking at doing this. Are you okay with it? Are you safe with flying like that?" And they said, "Yeah." And so we made the decision to go ahead and safety wire that shut. Now, to this day, now it's 10 years ago, I have no idea if what I did was right. Because legally, it was wrong. But morally, it was right. And in the military, I had the ability to make that decision. Now, here in the mortgage business, we may not always have that ability to make that decision. But I'll give you another example of morally right versus legally right. Back in the early 2000s, it was legally right, it was legally okay to give people loans who could not pay them back, who we knew could not pay them back. And that led up to the housing crisis of 2007, 2008. Now, legally, it was right to do that. But as we have seen from history, that was not morally right. Morality should drive our laws. Our laws should not drive our morality. You have to be able to determine what is morally right versus what is legally right and which plan of action you're going to take. And that goes back to our consequences. If you can say to your boss, "Hey, this is what I just made this decision. I looked at this information, I decided on this, and so I'm ready to take whatever consequences I get." If you can explain to your boss why you made that decision, they might tell you, "Okay, but you missed this, you missed Y, you missed Z. In future, you need to make sure you cover that." Versus, "I made this decision, but I don't know why." That's when you get fired. Not when you make a decision that you actually thought about. And so in this sea of gray, and as a leader in general, your value as a leader comes from your ability to navigate through this sea of gray. We don't pay you because you can look in a book and say, "This is the right answer," or "This is the wrong answer." We pay you so that when we get to those iffy situations, you can make the right decision. And that's what we need you to do. So remember, you and only you are responsible for your life choices and decisions. Are there any questions? Thank you.